Wow, it got really quiet in here. All right, welcome everybody. I'm James Orr. Thank you in advance for those that have volunteered to stand. I feel bad that the people that are standing didn't get a whole bunch of books, although maybe it's a good idea that you're not carrying the books and holding on to them for the next 2 hours. So thank you in advance for doing that. It also pays to get here early. So that is the strategy. All right, so upcoming classes. By the way, I'm James Orr. We're doing the best real estate investing strategy ever tonight. Okay? Upcoming classes. This is going to be a really easy class because I don't have someone here to harass me or challenge my math. Someone.
Are you calling me out that I need to fill that role?
You do not need to fill that role. Okay. So upcoming classes. Next week is house hacking versus Nomad. Raise your hand if you know. Raise your hand if you do not know what house hacking is. Raise them really high. Okay, awesome. Raise your hand if you don't know what Nomad is. Okay. Oh, that's for him. Okay, awesome. So come to the class next week and we'll go over this. We'll go over what the differences are between us. And then the week after that is Financial Independence Day. There's no class, but this does count as one of the classes I'm teaching this year. So when we do the stats, you will see that I have taught more than half the classes this year. And Brian has only taught like, I don't know, 2 classes or 3 classes or something like that. And then we're doing an interview with a successful real estate investor. How many people saw the other interviews we had with other real estate investors? Raise your hands if you've been to any interview where there was more than one person sitting in the front of the room being interviewed. Okay, so a bunch of you have not seen any of the interviews. How many of you at least heard Mary's interview? Who did not listen to Mary's interview? Okay, so you guys really need to go listen to Mary's interview. Of the people that saw Mary's interview or listened to it, would recommend go listening to Mary's interview. Would you guys all recommend that? Yeah, it is amazing. So if you haven't listened to Mary's interview, it's available on the podcast. I'll give you a link here in a second, but it's like podcast.ncraig.com. Go listen to Mary's interview. It's like, I don't know what it's called. Something amazing, something amazing, something amazing. It's probably what the title is, but it's like really, really good. Go listen to Mary's interview. It'll like change your like whole perspective on what can be accomplished. She's truly like awesome. So
that one survived the pruning of
it did. Podcast. I left it up for everybody. It was worthwhile for everyone to hear. Yeah, so it's on the podcast and will remain on the podcast. So that is. So we have an upcoming interview. It's going to be with someone who's never been interviewed before. It's going to be good. Another experienced real estate investor from our marketplace, and so that is going to be on July 10th. Then we're going to do Real Estate Investor Financing 101. How many people have ever been to one of our financing classes where we go through all the different financing strategies, how to get loans, what to look for in loans, all the different loan programs, down payment types, how to qualify for loans, all that stuff? How many people have ever come to one of those classes? Only like 2 or 3 people in a room? How many people have not been to a financing class we taught? Oh, well, I'm glad we're teaching it then because it's going to be pretty awesome. That's coming up on July 17th. See, when I do these classes, this is where we're coming from. So Brian and I and Royce will sit down and we'll talk about like, so what classes should we teach coming up here? And we'll be like, we could go teach a deal analysis class, or we could teach asset protection, or we could teach a class on partnerships. And we're like, we just taught that class. Like, I don't know, 3 years ago. Like, who really needs to see another version of that class? And this is like really how we think about it. We're like, I don't really want to go teach another financing class. But apparently, there's enough new people that you guys have never seen these classes before and probably should come to them. So we should probably take that as feedback moving forward. That we have so many different classes that it's like they get looped back around. Yeah, so I guess we'll have to do that. This always surprises me. Of the people here, how many of you have an interest in bookkeeping and accounting? Raise your hands really high. Interest. Like that, think that is cool or interesting or something you want to learn about. This is crazy to me.
No. It's a forced interest.
Well, forced interest. Oh.
Look at all that.
This is making more sense to me. Okay. I just write a check and have someone else do all that stuff. So I have 0 interest in that class, which is why I was never taught before. Brian's like, we should do a bookkeeping and accounting class. I'm like, really? No one's going to come.
How much did they embezzle from you?
Who embezzled from me?
Exactly.
No one embezzled anything from me.
You have no idea.
I probably do. I keep track of my money.
But Brian's the opposite. He checks every statement every month from every property, and he will call them and ask, what's this $4 charge?
I am not sure that is true. It's possible. Let's keep the myth alive.
I think it's
right?
I think it's true.
The legend alive. Let's keep the legend alive that Brian checks everything all the time. Yeah, I'm not sure that's true. It could be. So anyway, that's July 24th. Any kind of questions about the schedule before we move on? Okay. In the past, how many people have come to a class where I talked so fast you could not understand half of what I said? Okay. How many people listen to me at half speed on the podcast?
No.
You can't do that? What do you mean? It's not possible?
It's harder to understand you.
Oh, really? You tried though? Really? Okay. Yeah, that's good to know. All right, so I will try to go slower tonight. There are fewer slides, fewer charts, more stories, and more interaction. So tonight's going to be a good night to do that. So I'll go a little slower. All right, so introductions. So Royce is going to start. Who are you? And then what do you think is the best real estate investing strategy? And I will try to be gentle tonight. Tammy's not here to kind of keep me in check, and nor is Brian. So Royce, it's all on you to make sure I behave tonight. So who are you, and what do you think is the best real estate investing strategy?
All right, so I'm Royce. I'm a local real estate investor here in Northern Colorado. Done some lease option partnerships. The best strategy is the Nomad lease option combo.
Nice. I thought you were going to say the best strategy is the one you do. I thought you were going to say that.
I'm Bob, and I've got no idea.
You have no idea what the best strategy is? What's your favorite strategy right now?
I don't have one.
What's your favorite one that you'd like? If I could do a deal today, it would be this. Fix and flip, wholesaling,
Probably
partnership, buy and hold.
wholesaling.
Wholesaling. Okay, wholesaling is your best deal right now. Bruce.
I'm Bruce, and I don't know what the best one is. I'm working at fix and flip, but I'm not.
That's your favorite right now, fix and flip?
That's my favorite.
Awesome.
I'm James, local buy and hold, and I do property maintenance and remodel.
Okay.
House hacking and Nomad, a combo of those two. I mean, I've seen the numbers from all your classes. Those are the best because those produce the most return on your investment.
Awesome. Cool. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Munir, and pretty much buy and hold is what we do.
Okay.
But I think the best real estate strategy is the one that you do.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If you don't do anything, nothing happens.
That's true.
I'm Dan, and I think the best strategy would be to buy low and sell high.
So you actually think buying and selling is the best strategy?
No, I was just being facetious.
Okay.
Actually, I think buying multi-unit properties would be a good,
Okay.
pretty good.
Awesome. Thank you.
My name's Doug, and I like the nomading.
Nice. Awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
My name is Alex, and I like the nomading with the lease option. At least that's what I'm planning to do.
Nomad lease option? Okay. Awesome.
My name's Marcus, and I like the nomad option.
Nice. Very cool. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm Kevin, I'm a local contractor down fix and flip.
So when we do the microphone, otherwise I'm going to get complaints. If you guys would speak into the mic and just try to hold it there, because if I don't, then people complain that they can't hear you, and then I get yelled at, and so then I got to yell at you, and it makes everyone just really uncomfortable. So number one, don't yell at me if you can't hear other people, and two, if you would talk into the mic, that'd be awesome.
I'm Dave. I'm thinking of wholesaling, but I like the Nomad.
Awesome. Very cool. Thank you. So wholesaling is a job, right? It's not really an investing strategy. Right? It's like I go out there, it's almost like being a real estate broker, except you have to do both sides and you get paid about 1/10 the amount. Right? Isn't that really what it is? So.
My name's Emily, and I've had the most luck with multifamily investing, but I really don't like picking favorites. I like to be open-minded to opportunities. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Welcome.
My name's Elizabeth, and I'm a recruiter, and I don't know really much of anything, so I'm here to find out what is the best strategy.
Awesome. A recruiter like a military recruiter?
No, for jobs, for companies.
Oh, very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
My name's Mike. I'd say it depends.
Okay. I'll take that one at this point.
I'm John. Just getting into this. I looked at the Nomad book, and I love the whole concept of that. And I'm kind of interested in doing lease options. I don't know anything about those.
Okay.
So maybe we can do something on that sometime.
Awesome. Yes.
I'm Julie, and I'm just learning all of this. So right now, I just kind of really know wholesaling and flipping.
Awesome. Thank you.
I'm Dion, local wholesaler, and I practice wholesaling and flipping. But like what was stated earlier, the best strategy is the one that you actually go out and practice.
Totally.
But I'm curious to learn everything, like I said earlier.
Awesome. Thanks. Welcome.
My name is Jamie, and I'm hoping that Nomad is the best one, or else We're wasting money.
You're hoping? Like I'm gonna do Nomad, and I just hope it's the best one I got.
I'm Dwayne, and based on listening to this podcast class before, it was nomading. So
Okay. Did I teach this one before? Yeah. Oh, nice. There's gonna be some changes in.
I'm Nolan, and I think the best real estate investing strategy depends on your market, your risk threshold, and a bunch of other factors.
Sure, that's true.
I'm Al. I'm going to say long-term buy and hold.
Yeah. It's strange. Al, I know your name. Every time I look at your name tag, though, I think it's AI. I think of you as like artificial intelligence in the back of the room just hanging out over there.
I'm Laura. What Al said. I'm Jackie. I like fix and flips.
Thanks.
I'm Lindsay, and we are kind of new to this whole investing strategy. So from what we have learned so far, I'd probably say Nomad.
Awesome, thanks.
I'm Nathan. Same answer, pretty much Nomad and buy and hold.
Awesome. What's on your hat? Is that Alaska?
Hawaii.
That's Hawaii. Oh, another island chain. Oh, you have multiple state hats? Really? Oh, okay. Okay. Fair enough.
My name's Peter. Only thing I've done was wholesale, but I do want to get into other strategies, but I've only done wholesale.
Very cool.
I'm Kevin, and I'd say it depends on where you're at and what you're trying to get out of it. But
probably true.
For me, just starting out, I'd say Nomad or house hacking.
Nice, awesome.
I'm Grace, and I really like the buy and hold.
Very cool.
I'm Lynn, and I've had the best luck with multiple family.
Multifamily. Yeah.
I'm Gianni, and I'm just getting started, but I'm interested in subletting and leasing.
Subletting and leasing. So like leasing from somebody and then
Subletting it off the...
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. Do they know that you're doing that?
Hopefully.
Okay.
Following the rules.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, cool.
My name is Adam, and I'm doing something similar, but not with physical property.
Not with physical property?
Server property.
What is it?
IT infrastructure.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome, thanks.
I'm Nick, and I would have to say Nomad.
Nice, awesome.
I'm Austin, and I'd have to say whatever my wife tells me.
Your wife's not even here.
Which is why this is why the only time I'll actually say it.
Really? That's awesome. All right, did we miss anybody? We're good? Allison, do you want to go? Allison's good. She's shy.
Good. I won't walk across the room then.
That sounds good. All right, let's hope this works. There we go. All right, so there's a podcast. So we changed very recently. We changed how the podcast works. We used to have all the episodes up there, like 140 of them or something like that. Now we have like the 4 most recent ones and a few samples from the vault, which is what we do when we lock them down after they're up there. So you can go access it at podcast.ncraig.com. It's also available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. See the email invite. Is there anyone not getting email invites from me besides James? Everyone else is getting email invites? Okay, good. And I know I've been saying it for a while, but there's a new podcast coming. So, why Nomad? So this has been updated in, I think it's every 3 years or so, the government goes and they do a survey of people, and they basically tally up a whole bunch of really interesting financial data. One of the ones I like to look at, though, is the difference in net worth between someone who owns a home and someone who rents. And so this is the data for the median value of net worth, so what the middlemost value of net worth is for someone. And there's basically 2 different lines on here. One of them is for people that own their own home, and the other one is for people that rent. And this is in thousands of dollars. So it shows going all the way back to 1989. That's the blue line on top over here. I guess I'll stand up. So right over here, this shows you the net worth. This over here shows you 2016. It shows you what the median net worth is for someone who owns a home. And this line is the median net worth for someone who rents. Now, I don't know if there is cause and effect, but I will tell you that they are strongly correlated. So people's net worth is correlated to whether or not they own a home. So start thinking about that. Now, one of the things, if this was correlated, if one was cause and effect, then you would think, hey, if buying one house gets me a lot more net worth, maybe I should buy more than one. Okay, and so that's the thinking behind tonight. You can see the difference here on the chart. The $231,000 is the median net worth in 2016. $5,000 is the median net worth for a renter, for homeowner versus renter. Anyone have any questions on that? Is that an interesting stat? I find that one particularly interesting. Okay. So, apparently my thing is not working. There we go. So I just want to read you a quote from Warren Buffett on single-family homes. So Warren Buffett, this is a quote from him. Warren Buffett says, along with equities, single-family homes are a very attractive investment right now. Appearing on CNBC's Squawk Box, Buffett tells Becky Quick he'd buy up, there's a quote, a couple 100,000 single-family homes if it were practical to do so. If held for a long period of time and purchased at low rates, interest rates, Buffett says houses are even better than stocks. He advises buyers to take out a 30-year mortgage and refinance it if rates go down. And that's the link to the article. So I don't think he's the richest man in the world right now, but he's probably top 5. And if the top 5 richest men in the world who made his money investing in stocks tells you that if held for a long period of time and purchased at low rates, houses are even better than stocks, tells you that, maybe you want to kind of listen to the richest man in the world at one point, kind of his advice on that. Does that sort of make sense? Class, this is the participation part of class. Does that make sense? Yep. Okay, good. For people that have multiple books, you need to really speak up. If you only got one book, I can understand you kind of phoned it in, but come on. All right. All right, so best real estate investing strategy ever. So what is Nomad? Who is Nomad for? Nomad is for people behind on what they need for retirement. I don't want to ask people how old they are in the room, but if you're 40 years old or older and you're thinking to yourself, I haven't saved quite as much as I need for retirement, then Nomad is a good strategy for you, and I'll show you some numbers on that tonight. What about people who have limited down payment and want to get started investing in real estate? Anyone watch late night TV or some crazy guy on YouTube or Facebook telling you about how you can make $1 gazillion investing in real estate with none of your own money? And exactly, they sell all the books you've got sitting right in front of you. Yeah, so if you guys have seen any of that stuff, these strategies do work, and Nomad is one of those strategies that can work in this marketplace where you can basically do it with little or no down payment. You can get started. Young professionals looking to build massive wealth. Whenever I think about this, I think of 2 people. I think of Royce, and I think of my son. So young professionals, someone who recently graduated college, working at a good job, and they have income, and they're like, you know, I don't want to work forever. I have a good job. I've been moving in college. It's not that big of a deal for me to move. So this seems like a really interesting strategy for me if it makes sense to do so financially. And so that's who I think about. Young professionals looking to build massive wealth. People interested in passing on wealth to their kids or grandkids. That's sort of me in some ways. But if you have money and you want to get money out of your estate and into your kids' estate and teach them while you're still around, this is a really interesting strategy for doing that. And then it's also a really good strategy for people that want to pay for college. If you went to college, you have student debt, this is a good strategy for paying off the student debt. If you've got young kids and you're trying to save for college, is also a really good strategy for saving for either your kids or your grandkids going to college. And so those are really the 5 groups of who Nomad is for. Does anyone have another group that I didn't hit in here that you're part of that you're like, what about people like this, James? Anyone? Anyone part of a group that was not covered in any of those? Royce, are you part of that group?
Fire.
That's what you guys are trying to get started? That's right. I don't even think there were people here that were from the fire class. There's only like 3 of you. Yeah, there's like 4 of you from the fire class.
But no, yeah.
Do you have a question?
I checked out.
I would say it's also good for people that live in like high value markets, right? So like if you live in a place where saving $100,000 for 20% down is really hard, like
yeah,
that'd be good there.
That's definitely true. Yeah, you don't need to be in a high value market, but it works in high value markets. Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah, Mike, you have microphone? Microphone, yeah.
Investors that want to hoard their cash for, you know, things that produce a lot of cash on cash return and just focus on deals where they can have tax advantage and build wealth.
Yep, I think that's a good one too. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about that a little bit later as well. All right, Munir, you are now the holder of the microphone. All right, so tonight I'm going to tell you stories. Normally I pack this thing. Who's been to a class where I had 300 slides? Yeah, it's hard to follow, right? So you'll notice I'm trying to slow down. I notice when I sit that I slow down a little bit, so I apologize to the 7 of you that are sort of standing, but I'm not giving up my chair tonight for your benefit, okay? So basically, I will be slowing down and telling you stories. That's what the intention of tonight is. So who has the Creating Wealth book? Because I think there's a copy floating around here. Do you have it? Okay, awesome. So that book that she has right there, how many people came to the class Brian taught on creating wealth? Raise your hands. Who missed that class? Everyone else? Yeah, okay. So that was a really good class. And Brian basically goes over this, what they teach in this book. And by the way, just read those chapters. I can't believe I'm about to say this on mic. I'll be nice about it. Do not read the rest of the book. Okay? It is not good.
The theory's good.
Ignore the rest of the book, okay? But there's a couple really interesting chapters in there. And one of the things that this guy talks about, Robert Allen, he's the guy who wrote Nothing Down. Probably some of you guys have his books in the audience as well. So Robert Allen he talks about this idea of buying 2 houses a year. And he tells you to go do it basically with nothing down, if I remember correctly. And once you acquire 20 properties, at the end of your acquisition period, you sell off half of your properties, 10 of them, and you use the proceeds from that in order to pay off the first 10. And so you end up at the end of a 20-year period owning 10 properties free and clear. Now, as Brian teaches in the class, and you'll find out if you read the book, it has some really crazy assumptions in order to get to that endpoint. But the idea of buying more houses than you need and then selling off some of them in order to pay off the remaining ones is sound. It's just his assumptions for what the market will do and your ability to buy nothing down properties and things like that is suspect. Yeah, it's optimistic at best. Okay, so I would not encourage you to go and say, oh, he's talking about buying it with 8% appreciation rates and everything's going to work out magically. Don't do that. But the idea of being able to buy more than you have and then paying off the other ones does make sense. And so we started thinking about this. In fact, I went back and I listened to an old recording, and apparently this was the conversation we were having originally when you told me that you wanted to basically buy a house every year with 5% down. I'm looking at Royce right now. And you told me you wanted to do this, and I ran home and built the spreadsheet for you, and this is how the whole Nomad thing kind of started. So it was based on this idea of buying a whole bunch of properties and then never selling them in this case. So so it's challenging to do this model in our market. It is not challenging to do it with Nomad in our marketplace. And so just be aware of that, okay? Any questions on Robert Allen's Creating Wealth? Go listen to the recording if it's on the podcast. I don't know if it's still up there. Do you know if it's still up there? Okay. Oh, Royce is going to check and tell us if it's on there. But if you can, go listen on the podcast because Brian does a good 2-hour job of explaining it, and he actually changes the numbers to be in our market. And so it's really good. Okay, so what is Nomad? And there's lots of different variations in this, but Nomad, for anyone who's never seen it before, is buy a home as an owner-occupant. You have to move into the property. So owner-occupant means you need to move into the property. You live there for a year. Why do we move into the property, by the way?
FHA requirements?
It's not FHA requirement.
Just a loan requirement?
It's a loan requirement, yes. Why else do we do it?
Tax reasons.
What's that?
Tax reasons.
Not really tax reasons.
Better interest rate.
Better interest rate.
Lower down payment.
Lower down payment. Those are really the big reasons, okay? So we buy a house as an owner-occupant. We live there for a year. That is a requirement of the loan. So if the lender starts changing their requirements and they start saying, hey, you only need to live in a property 2 weeks or 3 months or 13 months or 15 months or 3 years, we will change how we teach Nomad. Today, the requirement is you must live in the property for a year, and so that's what we teach. Does that make sense, everybody? So it's not like I'm making up some arbitrary 1-year thing. It's not a magical number. It's just what the lender requires when you sign the docs that say you're doing owner-occupant. Everyone follow? Yeah, micro.
And you can move sooner under certain circumstances.
That is correct. There are exceptional circumstances where you can move sooner than that. Yep. All right, so you live there for a year, then you buy a new house, and you owner-occupy that one. You move out of the other house, but you keep it as a rental. Does everyone follow that? So you're moving out of the last house, and you're converting it to a rental property. Then you repeat this process until you have the number of rentals that you want. So if you want 2 rental properties, you just do this twice. You want 10 rental properties, you do it 3 times. 10 times. You want 15 rental properties, you do it 15 times. So however many rental properties you want, that's how many times you do it. Does anyone have any questions on what Nomad is? Okay. By the way, I'm slowing down to give you time for questions. Usually I'll say, are there any questions? I will immediately turn around and not even look at the room. So this is your chance to ask questions tonight if you have questions. Okay. Yeah, question. Microphone. No worries.
My situation, I moved into my first house.
Yep.
Then I wanted a condo. Then I moved into a second one because I wanted that one more.
Yep.
And then I wanted to get another condo.
Yep.
Thought I liked better. I want to live there. But I put down 20% on those first two.
Sure.
Well, actually, all three.
Yeah.
So I'm actually ahead of the game as far as nomading goes, at 5%, right? As far as equity goes.
Equity, but it's hard to eat equity.
Right.
So it's really a function of cash flow.
Right.
So the tricky part is you could put 20% down. It will improve your cash flow. It's not going to increase the speed at which you get them paid off unless you're making extra principal payments and you have less to pay off. But if you think about it, it's still a 30-year loan or 15-year loan, whatever you end up getting. So it's still the same amount of time, but it does improve cash flow by doing that. And it probably also improved your interest rate a little bit and probably got rid of PMI. So there are some advantages doing it. The challenge is if you put 20% down on one property, how many additional properties can you buy? If you'd only put 5% down, you probably could have bought 3 instead of 1. And so unless you have unlimited funds or a huge pile of money that you're trying to place, in a lot of cases it's probably better to do the 5% down than it is to do the 20. But you can make a case to do the 20. I mean, it just does improve your cash flow a little bit. You have another question?
What are some of the circumstances you've seen where people moved in less than a year and it was okay?
So they have to move more than 100 miles away is one of the ones I've heard of. I had a friend/client of mine that bought a vacation home and decided he liked the vacation home better than he liked the home he was living in. And he bought the vacation home before the year was up and ended up moving into the vacation home and living the rest of the time there. But he kept the other property unrented for that period of time. So that's kind of a weird situation. Job transfer, divorce. I've heard change of family status, like if you get married or get divorced or have kids or something like that. Some of those will actually apply in some unusual circumstances for you to be able to do that. So things like that. Yeah. That you like a house better, not usually going to go. Yeah. So although I don't know the timing of it, but I did have a client buy a house in a neighborhood because they really like the school district. Then another house literally across the street from them came on the market. That one backed to expansive views of mountains and open space. And so they're like, this is my dream home. This is the one I want to be in forever. And I think they were able to appeal and get the underwriter to go along with it. And they had to write a letter to explain that. But that's highly unusual. So yeah, I wouldn't plan on that. It's hard in general to get an underwriter to approve you moving across the street. I've had loans kicked back and saying we're not going to underwrite this because it literally was the same exact property across the street in worse condition. So just be aware that that's not a normal thing. But I have had other clients buy multiple properties in the same neighborhood. They did find another lender who allowed them to move across the street, exact same property, worse condition. And this client in particular was able to move across the street. And I don't know the timing. I'd have to go look back at what the public record says on that. But they literally moved into the property across the street with better views that they were going to plan on living in forever. And they kept the other property. Want to pass the mic back?
Yeah, why do the lenders have that 1-year restriction?
Why do they have a 1-year restriction? Probably because when they look back at their loan default rates, they see that people who live in their property are less likely to default on a loan, especially a low down payment loan, than someone who buys a property and moves in for 60 days and moves out, or 30 days, or doesn't have any requirement at all.
Like if they have an unstable job situation, they're more likely to go in and out of
I don't know if it's a job situation or if they just look back at just statistics of what kind of foreclosure rates they have, and they say people that live there for a year or more have lower foreclosure rates. I don't know exactly what they do for that, but I'm sure it's something like that, some type of risk mitigation sort of strategy is my guess. Anyone else have a clue? I think that's probably what they're doing. Yeah. All right, any other questions? Nice. It is really quiet in here. All right, so here's why Nomad. So the pros of doing Nomad: owner occupied, you get lower down payments required. So you can buy a property with nothing down. There's USDA, there's VA, Canvas has a nothing down loan program. I think KeyBank has a nothing down loan program, and I think Compass Bank has a nothing down loan program. So I believe there are 5 nothing down loan programs that I'm aware of in Northern Colorado. VA, you need to be a veteran. Anyone who here is a veteran? Thank you for your service. You guys can qualify for a nothing down loan. Yeah, there you go, go to the plug. And then you guys can do duplexes. You can do single-family homes, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes. You have to owner-occupy one of the units, and you can use your VA benefits more than one time. There's a limit on it. It's not just like one loan. So be aware that that could be really advantageous for you. It's a way to get into a duplex, triplex, fourplex, or single-family home with nothing down. Okay? So veteran, that's a special loan program for our veterans, for people that served in our military. It's a perk that they get for doing that. Thank you for doing it. The other one is USDA. USDA is for rural properties, properties that are outside city limits. How many people think that Windsor is really rural? Really rural, right? Like crazy rural? Yeah, Windsor qualifies as USDA. So if you really want to buy a property in a rural area, you can move to Windsor and you can get a nothing down loan program. Okay? So USDA is another option. Then Canvas, KeyBank, and Compass Bank, I don't know the terms of their program, but they're not based on rural things and they're not based on veterans. They're just like loans. I'm sure there's some type of income qualification. You can't earn crazy amount of money. You can't earn too little. So there's probably a sweet spot for you, but those are additional nothing down loan programs that I'm aware of. Anyone know of any other nothing down loan programs that we're not talking about? Besides creative financing, 'cause you can go buy houses subject to or get owner financing and do nothing down there too. They're just, you're spending marketing and you're finding deals and stuff off market probably in order to do this. Any other nothing down loan programs I forgot about? Okay, so those are nothing down. There's also a 3% down loan program for doing like your first deal or two. So there's a 3% down, it's conventional financing. Then there's a 3.5% down FHA loan. So you can buy a house with 3.5% down. That's usually the one that we talk about most for people that have credit challenges because the interest rate, the actual interest rate does not change based on your credit score. So you can have, you know, just above the bare minimum credit score and actually get an FHA loan. FHA is the other one, like VA, that you can also do duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes with as long as you move into one of the units. You can do single family homes, duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes with FHA as well. Okay? And then after that, you have a question?
I was curious, on the FHA loans, do you know what the upper limit of the price band is to qualify?
It varies by county, and it's published on their website, so you can go look up what it is or ask your lender, but I don't know them from memory. But they do bump up. So there's loan limits.
I was curious, I know we were getting really close to where like you weren't going to find a duplex and qualify for that FHA loan and Larimer type thing.
Yeah, you can still find them, but it's getting harder. I mean, they're definitely pushing up against there as prices go up. So 3.5% is FHA. Then there's 5% down conventional. And as long as you can qualify for the financing, you can get as many 5% down conventional loans as you want. So you can repeatedly move into a property, put 5% down, live there for a year, and do that as many times as you can still qualify with your income for those loans. Okay? So that's what we typically use for Nomad. Then, of course, you can put any amount greater than that. You can put 6% down, you can put 10% down, you can put 15% down. Once you get to 20% down, though, PMI, private mortgage insurance, goes away. Does that make sense, everybody? Okay. So, yeah, James, question? We need another microphone? I can barely keep track of this one.
I just want to give him I think you need a couple that hang from the ceiling for the entire room.
Probably should do something like that.
What is the lowest non-owner occupied loan percentage-wise for down payment? What's the lowest you've ever seen? Can you do anything under 20%?
Trick question. Okay. So, I love these questions. So you can get a 15% down non-owner occupant loan. Okay? They have PMI and the rates are ugly. You can go call your lender and have them quote you for 15% down, but they tend to be gnarly, okay? But that's really not the only way to do it, right? If you really wanted to get creative and go off market, you can buy non-owner occupant financing creatively. You can go take over loans subject to, you can get owner financing, all that other stuff. So conventional financing you can go to a mortgage broker and get 15% is the answer to that question. 20% you get rid of PMI, but you can do conventional, you can do regular financing, creative financing rather, out in the marketplace and put less of that down. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So why do Nomad? Owner occupied, lower down payments required. You might still want to put more than minimum down. It improves your cash flow. Better interest rates. And I highlighted this because I'm going to shock you tonight. Okay. I tried to call Royce the other day when I was running numbers. I'm like, this is amazing. And actually, he didn't answer the phone. So he's going to hear it tonight for the first time. So better interest rates. And you might think to yourself, does this even matter? I mean, how much better are the interest rates for an owner-occupant loan versus a non-owner occupant, right? They can't be that much better, right? Oh boy, wait do you see. Another reason to do Nomad is you can educate yourself and learn over time. The challenge a lot of times in real estate investing is you come to class, Brian goes and teaches you whatever he's teaching that night, you know, something. You go, that's the most amazing thing in the world, that's what I want to do. And then you go out there and you realize, holy crap, I don't know everything I need to do. It's really, really hard for me to do wholesale because I don't know how to do deal structuring for all these different types of deals. I don't know asset protection. I don't know how to do property management, all these different things, right? So the really interesting thing about Nomad is you can buy a house as an owner occupant. You move in there and then you have a year to figure everything out. You can come to all the classes. You can listen to all the podcasts. You do whatever you need to do. You have the full year in order to figure everything out. If at the end of the year you say, I don't know what I was thinking. James is crazy. How he talked us into doing this Nomad thing is beyond me. I'm done. I'm never doing Nomad again. The good news is you bought a house. Okay? The bad news is you bought a house. Okay? And you don't have to buy any more. It's not like when you decide to do Nomad that you're committing, you're like saying, guess what, we're getting married, we're doing 20 Nomads, which is what I'm trying to tell Tammy. We're doing 20 Nomads. Okay? So basically, you can go and buy one property, you have the full year in order to learn, and then once you're done with the year, you can decide whether or not you want to do the next one or not. If you do one more, you have a full another year before you have to decide, okay, I want to do another one, or James is totally crazy. He tricked me into buying two, but that's it. Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on James. Something like that, right? Okay? So that's the strategy. You basically can do that. Is there anyone who would like to voluntarily give up their seat? Okay. Thank you, Dan. Okay. Thank you for doing that, Dan. I appreciate it. So you can have time to educate yourself and learn, and then you're highly leveraged. Are you more leveraged if you put 20% down or if you put 5% down?
5.
Thank you. 5% down, yes. So you get a 20-to-1 leverage when you put 5% down versus doing 20% down, you're only 5-to-1 leverage. Did I say that already? Like in my head, I talk to myself. You're 20-to-1 with 5% down. You are 5-to-1 with 20% down. Okay. So what are the downsides of doing Nomad? Number one is you can only acquire one property per year. There's some really rare exceptions, but don't count on them. You can have your kids do it more than once to kind of pass on wealth, but really you're limited to one. Or you could buy additional non-owner occupant properties if you want to do that. How many people are following the news where you saw the article about the couple in Denver that are being prosecuted by Denver, by the city of Denver for doing like Airbnb with what they considered 3 of their own personal residences? Owner occupant residence. You all follow that? Anyone miss that? Okay, so if you think to yourself, so really we'll just tell them we're doing owner occupant financing. We'll move in. No one's going to check. We'll go do one a month later or 2 months later or 3 months later. We'll tell them it's another owner occupant property. We'll fix this Nomad thing. James has got it mostly figured out, but he like skipped this part. We could basically do this 10 times in 1 year and be done. How many people think that's a good idea? Good. I'm glad no one raised their hands because that's called loan fraud and you will go to prison. Okay, so these guys are being prosecuted by the city of Denver for basically occupancy fraud. They were claiming that it was their owner-occupant property and Airbnb-ing it, and the rules in Denver for Airbnb are that you need to only do it in your owner-occupant property. So follow along in the news as that kind of comes out. There's some people online saying, oh, they're going to get a slap on the wrist, not a big deal. I don't think so. I think the city's been setting this up for a while.
There's evidence that they knew what they were doing was wrong.
Yeah.
That is what the courts are going to use to prosecute.
The speculation is that there's evidence that they knew what they were doing was wrong. I don't know anything about that, but maybe. Okay, so cons. The other downside is you must live in the property for a year. It is a lender requirement. I think we beat that horse to death, right? That's kind of an odd saying, especially if you like horses. Odd saying. All right. Anyway, now that we're all sad, moving on. All right, who has the best eyesight in here in the back row? No? No one? All right, so this is, I'm in the process of moving out of my current property that I lived in since 2003, and we're selling the property. We're nomading into a brand new property. And so I called up our lender, and I said to our lender, please send me over rate quotes for buying a property now. And so this is what they sent over. They also sent over one for non-owner occupant for putting 20% down. And so these are the different quotes today, yesterday, from the lender for different things. And the one on top is owner occupant. The one on bottom is the 20% down. So let's take a look. Remember before we said interest rates matter? Interest rates are they differ between you doing owner occupant and doing investor. Let me read you some of this, okay? So if you wanted to go do a loan, the one you'd get if you wanted like the closest one to 0 points you're paying, 0 cost up front for doing owner occupant is you'd get a $451 credit, and that would get you 3.875% today on a 5% down owner-occupant loan. How many people bought a house recently and are really pissed off right now because you got, yeah, exactly, right? Because what rate did you get recently? 4.25. What'd you get? 4. Yeah, so rates are down. This is where it matters. But right now, if you go to a lender, the rate right now for close to par, it's not exactly par, but $451 credit to you at closing is 3.875. If you pay them $3,600, which in this case is about 1% of the loan amount, if you pay them $3,600, you can buy your interest rate down to 3.5%. 3.5% with a $3,600, about 1 point in buy down. Is there anyone else who's like super excited right now that they don't even want to finish teaching class? They just want to run outside and say, this is amazing stuff, right? It's like crazy, amazing good. Does everyone follow? 3.5% is what you're getting on your loan with a $3,600 buy down. And that's for a 5% down owner-occupant loan.
When you do that buy down and increase your closing costs, essentially, is that a tax write-off if on owner-occupant or not on non-owner-occupant? And then how do you do the math to determine where the sweet spot is?
So I have no idea if it's a tax write-off. I have a feeling it's closing costs, so that it is, but I don't know that for sure. I'm not a tax specialist. And then what was the second part of the question?
How do you do the math to determine? I know it depends, like how long you're depending on like keeping the property.
Is it worthwhile doing?
Yeah.
Oh, so Brian has a 2-hour class on that alone. Okay. And it's basically buying down your interest rate. He gives you a spreadsheet, and you basically put down what the buy down cost is for each level, and then you look at it, and it tells you how many months it took you to recoup your costs, and then what your return is after that period. He made this like amazing spreadsheet, and it's available on the website. So if you want to email me, and I'll email you a copy, but it's on a recording. There's a 2-hour class on that topic alone.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
If you buy this one down from the 451.
Microphone. Thank you.
If you buy this one down from 3.875 to 3.5,
yeah,
you recoup your cost there in 4 years and 3 months.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, and the other thing to take into account, and I'm not reteaching Brian's class because he does an amazing job, but I will tell you this. One of the other things you want to take into account when you do that math, which I don't think Brian does, is the cost of the appraisal you're going to have to pay for in order to get rid of it early, right? So when you actually let PMI drop off automatically, in order to prove that you're below the 78% loan to value where PMI will drop off, you need to usually pay for an appraisal. So it's going to be $600 to $800 in cost. So when I think about this, I subtract off $600 from this cost that I had to do, and then I figure the $3,000 is what I really need to make up, because that's what I'm going to need to do. So that's why I do it that way. I'm not reteaching this class. So if you got questions about that, let's go ahead and save those for when we teach that class again, or email me something. Oh, wait, Roy says he has questions.
No, it was a realization of some math today. Because I talked to James yesterday about whether I wanted to buy down a rate on my own loan, and the question was around return on equity, because there's a high likelihood that I'll refinance, pull some equity out to go acquire other deals along the way. So if I'm not going to hold it for 30 years, does it really make sense to pay the money to pay it down? I actually have convinced myself that if you're putting 5% down, it 100% makes sense, at least at those prices, to buy it down. Because assuming a 3% appreciation rate, it ends up being well worth it, because you aren't to the 20% loan to value range that you would need to be in to even be able to pull money out. So you actually have like this handcuff period of time no matter what in that case.
Okay, that's interesting. I appreciate that. Okay, so this was owner-occupant. If you put 5% down and you decided to buy down the rate, it was about $3,600. Would somebody, or all of you please, write down those numbers, because we're going to use them later. So 3.5%, $3,610 is the cost in order to buy it down to 3.5. Okay?
Can I just take a picture of your slide?
Please do not take pictures of my slides, although you probably wouldn't work from there anyway. Okay, so that was the owner-occupant one. Now, same day, same lender, I asked them to run me numbers if I was going to put 20% down. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to put 20% down, and I'm going to get a rate that is about par, which in this case is 5.25 for $760. So it cost me $760 to get 5.25% on my loan.
Non-owner occupant, correct?
Non-owner occupant, 20% down. Okay? What if I wanted to buy it down? What if I'm like, I got money to burn? What if I wanted to try to get the lowest interest rate I possibly can by buying it down? It would cost me $2,660 to buy it down to a whopping 4.875. 4.875. What was the interest rate I could get if I had the lender give me a little credit and I didn't buy the rate down as an owner occupant? 3.875 was that one. So it's a full 1 percentage point higher to do this 20% down loan, okay? And that's with buying it down. So the difference is 4.875 versus 3.5, and it cost me only about $1,000 or so more to do the owner-occupant one. Is that crazy or what? Right? So how many people are like, I want to do 20% down investing? Raise your hands. Don't be shy. I'm only going to embarrass you for a moment. Yeah, so this is the thing you're up against, though, right? You decide you want to do 20% down investing. You can have a great property, but you're already significantly handicapped because your interest rate is so much higher, even though you put more down. Seems like a safer loan in some ways. Just nutso. Okay? Any questions on that before I move on? Yeah, microphone.
I'm not running like you were.
Yeah, I was wondering. You must have worked out today because you like. Did you do legs?
I ran this morning.
Yeah, you did legs today.
What's the cost of this house?
$380,000. I'm going to show you the next slide.
And then I assume it's a 720 credit score or better.
I don't know what Tammy has, but probably something amazing. I'm sure. Okay. Any questions on this? Okay. Moving on. All right. So what I did, you guys may have recognized this from Brian's spreadsheet. Anyone come to a deal analysis class and seen this before? How many of you have never seen this before? Whoa! Okay, so if you have not seen this before, this is the deal analysis spreadsheet that everyone gets for free from Encraig. I don't know the URL, maybe jamesorr.com/spreadsheet or learntoberich.com/spreadsheet or something like that, or email me and I'll try to send you a link to the spreadsheet. But you can download a copy of this deal analysis spreadsheet. All the classes we teach on deal analysis, by the way, I noticed myself speeding up. I'm like pacing, I'm like going in front of the room, so I'm getting excited. So I will try to slow down. Sit down. So go get the spreadsheet, you can download it, and all the deal analysis class that Brian teaches, he teaches you how to do the spreadsheet with. Cool? Okay, so if you've never seen it before, this is it. This is 2 different pages from the spreadsheet, 2 different deals side by side. So this is one copy of the spreadsheet. Excuse me, this is another copy of the spreadsheet. Same property. I've just entered the numbers, one with me owner occupying nomading, 5% down, and the other one with 20% down. And then we're going to show you some differences between the two, I think, if I remember the presentation correctly. So let's just start at the top. The after repaired value, this is a $380,113 property. Brand new construction property. It was in Rain Dance in Windsor. It's a property I'm buying. Looks very similar to this. So you can get these properties today. It's not like this is some special amazing deal that there's only one of and it's a unicorn and now that it's gone, you guys are all out of luck. You could go buy this today, okay? Or tomorrow. So $380,000 purchase price. That's what it's worth too, $380,111. No seller concessions. And this one on the left, we put 5% down. The down payment amount is $19,006, $19,006. Our closing costs are crazy high. I'm going to talk to you about that. And the closing costs in this case are $10,393. Why in the world are these closing costs so insanely high, James? Anyone have any ideas? Oh, go ahead, blurt them out rather than. I'm buying down the rate, so that's about $3,600 of it. What else? I am prepaying PMI. In this case, prepaying private mortgage insurance cost me about $4,400. Now, what does prepaying PMI do? So if you have a loan and you're less than 20%, you make PMI payments. I think in this case, do you remember what the PMI payment was? Was it $140? $134 a month is what my PMI would have been monthly if I decided to pay it. In this case, it cost me $4,400 to get rid of it completely. So I don't have any PMI payments in this particular case by doing that up front. Okay? So you can decide to do the math as to whether or not you'd rather do monthly PMI. For me, I actually have extra cash. I would rather prepay the PMI and not have it at all. And so that's what I've opted to do. So that's $4,400 and $3,600 of those. What's that? $7,000? It's like $8,000. The rest of it is regular closing costs. Yeah, typical closing costs. Appraisal, title, whatever all that garbage stuff is. So it's basically another $2,000, almost $2,400 in typical closing costs that is there. So that's how I got this insanely high closing cost amount. Does that explain it to you guys? Make sense?
Is this in Michigan?
No, it is not in Michigan. It is a Arizona with a finished basement.
So I guess when you're buying new construction,
yep,
the loan doesn't start until you move into it. So that year starts when you move into the property. Is that how that works?
The loan starts when you close.
Okay, so you close on the property like right before you move into it, though, correct?
Yeah, like you close in the morning and then you move in the afternoon.
But if you're buying new construction, it's like 3 months out.
Nope, it's the same thing. Yeah, they wait for the house to be finished before you do the closing.
Okay.
Yep, so the house is completely done. You walk through it, make sure everything's standing, and then you close on it. Yeah, it's a good question, though.
Can you lock in your rate that far out?
The question was, can you lock in your rate that far out? This house was already done when I bought it. I had them finish the basement, which extended the closing by like 3 weeks. So I pushed out closing by asking them to do the longest they possibly could. And yes, you can lock out rates that far. In this case, it would have been a 30-day lock easily. In fact, there's ones that are available there with 45-day locks right now that we know of.
They're glad to take your money and lock it in long
Yeah. The other interesting thing that came up recently is this particular lender we just found out, or I just found out, actually has a small seller concession type credit where you get a credit for using this lender with this particular builder. I was not aware of that. How much was it? $1,250? $1,500. So actually it's like $1,500 less than this. So it's about $9,000 is what my closing costs would be. Okay. All right. Any other questions on closing costs? Do you guys like that I'm going slow? Nice. Anyone really upset that I'm going slow? Whoa, there's like 3 people in the room that are upset. Okay. All right, so closing costs is that. Any questions on closing costs? We're good. Rent ready costs. So one of the few things you can't roll into the loan with the lender is blinds. And while I'm extremely comfortable walking around my house naked, I don't think the people around me are going to be nearly as comfortable with me walking around my house naked, especially since one of them is going to be my neighbor in this room. So definitely does not want to see me and all my manliness. So rent-ready cost includes $2,000 for window blinds in the house. You cannot finance that in, so that is an extra out-of-pocket cost in order to get property ready to move in. Everyone follow? By the way, this included base price of the property, AC, backyard landscaping, backyard fence, garage door opener, refrigerator, microwave. Anything else I'm missing? All the countertops were included. Yeah. But these are like extra things. It comes with a range refrigerator. Yeah, so it basically had everything rolled in. So $2,000 for the blinds for rent ready costs. This is for partnership, initial reserve account. We're not doing that. Credit partner, upfront fee, we're not doing that. Money partner, we're not doing that. So these are all partnership things. We leave those blank. Lease option fee. If you were going to be doing a lease option with this, you'd start putting in lease option fees in here to kind of see how that offsets some of your closing costs and upfront fees. In this case, I'm not. I'm moving into the property, living there for a year. So the first loan amount that I'm getting on the property is $361,107. What was my cost to buy down the rate? $3,600. So it's about 1% of the loan amount that it will cost me to buy down that rate from 3.875 to 3.5. Isn't that interesting? If there was going to be a PMI monthly payment amount, you'd put it in here. In this particular case, what did I do? I prepaid it, which is why my closing costs are so high. Okay, so if you wanted to, you could have put PMI monthly payment into the new spreadsheet that Brian just made, and it has the PMI payment in here now. That'll calculate correctly. Okay, my loan interest rate, oh my goodness, what is that?
Excellent.
3.5. It's amazing. It's a 30-year loan. I'm not getting a second mortgage at all. So my total investment, my cost to close on this deal is $31,399. $19,000 of that is my down payment. And then there's some closing costs and some rent-ready costs. Does everyone follow along? Okay. Doesn't matter square footage. That's wrong, by the way, so just ignore it. It's not really 1,600. And then I'm saying 15% of the property value is in the land because we're going to calculate depreciation. And then the property type is residential. We use that for calculating depreciation benefit as well. And then my effective income tax rate, I used a slightly lower one because I wanted to show you a more realistic example. I used 20% here. This should be your highest tax bracket because that's the one it comes off of first. So I used 20%, which I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is for somebody who makes about $60,000 a year. Okay, so I adjusted this for everyone else to be able to use. Okay, so all those numbers are here are for 5% down. This one over here is for 20% down. Let's see what's different. The price is the same, the value is the same. The down payment amount goes from 5 to now it's 20. So the down payment now is not $19,000 anymore, it's $76,000 and change. My closing costs, they were $10,393 before. Now they're $5,038. Do those seem high to anybody? Does it seem high to anybody? Because otherwise, I'll just skip it. You guys aren't questioning my math? So that's a little high, guys. Wow. So closing costs are $5,038. That's a little bit high. This includes buying down the interest rate. Okay? That includes that, like, whatever it was, 2,500, 3,600, 2,600. So that includes part of that. That's why the closing costs are a little bit higher. But you'll notice the interest rate's that 4.875. We just haven't gotten there yet. Okay? So that's closing costs, $5,000. Rent-ready costs, you still need to buy blinds. No reserves, no credit partner, no money partner, because we're not doing partnerships. No lease option fee. If we were doing a lease option, we would have put that in here. The loan amount now, it's $304,090. A lot lower. Oh my gosh, whose phone's going off? Please turn your phones off. Okay, $304,000 is the loan amount. Compare that to before, we were borrowing $361,000 compared to $304,000. So we're borrowing about, what is that, $55,000 less? You would think cash flow would be much better with this one. We're borrowing so much less money. Preview of what's to come. Okay? No PMI. Why don't we have PMI in this one? 20% down, non-owner occupant. There's no PMI once you get to 20% down. Loan interest rate, I talked about that, 4.875. A 30-year loan. No second loan, so we can ignore that. The total investment, cost to close, is $83,061 versus $31,000 and change here. So $83,000 versus about $31,000. How many more of these 5% ones can you buy compared to these? At least 2, right? Because this is 31,000, so that's 62 versus 83. Almost 3. And I really cranked up my closing costs here, right? So I can almost buy 3 times the number of properties by doing it this way. Same amount of down payment. That's pretty big. Okay. Square footage, that's the same. It's wrong in both of them. Land value, it's the same in both, 15%. Residential property, and 20% for effective income tax rate. Any questions on my deal setup? Because it's gonna be the deal we use for the rest of the night, sort of. Mike has questions. We have some questions, microphone man.
Are you going to show your total payment, what it ends up being with principal, interest, tax, insurance?
I don't think so. I'll show you some other stuff, but I don't think I actually show the actual payment. But if you need to see it, let me know and I'll email it to you.
Knowing that there's a slight discount in rate when you bump up to 25% down,
Yep.
Do you know what the discounted rate is?
I didn't in this case, but you can go do that. We can go ask for a 25% down payment quote and see how that compares. But you're starting to deal with a lot more money, right? Now we're getting another 5% down, which is another 20K almost, right? So you're starting to really put it in there. Yeah. Any other questions? I may go so slow we may not get done tonight. Okay. So return on investment quadrant. Who has not seen this before? Everyone has seen this before. Okay, we'll go over it then. So when you look at the return you're getting on investment real estate, there are 4 different areas of return you get. Appreciation, it's a tendency for property values to increase over time. Cash flow, that is the amount of cash flow you're getting after you pay all your expenses. You have rent coming in, you pay all your expenses on the property, including your mortgage, everything else. What's left over is cash flow. It can be negative. By the way, both these can be negative. Appreciation can be negative too. Property values go down. Cash flow can be negative. Tax benefits, that's your depreciation benefit you're getting for owning the property. And then debt pay down. Debt pay down is the return you get from that little part of the payment that you're making on the loan that pays down the amount you owe. So the amount you owe on a loan decreases over time with an amortizing loan. That small amount that gets bigger and bigger and bigger is what we call debt pay downs. That's another part of your return. Okay? So all these 4 returns combined together give you the overall return on investment you get in a property. Does that make sense? Is there anyone confused? Because it's about to get more complicated. Okay. All right, so appreciation. Appreciation. Is appreciation guaranteed? No. It's not guaranteed? Doesn't all properties don't go up to exactly 3% a year? No. No. Can they go down? Yes. So if we're expecting appreciation, what are we really doing? We're speculating. Because we really don't know if property values are going up or down. I think they might be going up, but I have no idea. They could go down next year. So this is speculative. Over a very long period of time, 2 economists, Case and Schiller, I think they're from Yale. They went together and they actually did a whole bunch of research over like a 100-year period, and they did same property sales, same property that sold next time. Excuse me, I'm burping a lot. They have all the, they figured out what the appreciation rate for all these different properties were, and over a very long period of time, it was about 3% nationwide. So if you're looking for a number to use, it's probably about 3% as a conservative number. They also found out that the appreciation rate was very, very close to what the inflation rate was. So some people argue that appreciation is really just inflation. Now, there are definitely periods of time in individual houses where they are going up faster than inflation, they're going up faster than the market, but as a whole, appreciation tends to be inflation. Okay? Recently, we've seen unsustainable numbers. We've seen 7, 8, 9, 10% appreciation rates in our local market. That, in my opinion, is not sustainable. You should use a much more conservative number like 3% when you're kind of doing your long-term modeling. But we may continue a little bit for a while, but then we may give some back, right? It may be 7% next year, but then the year after that, it may be -8 or -2. We don't know. Okay? And I will talk about this, provided I have time at the end, and how I look at appreciation specifically in Nomad, because we are not banking on appreciation at all. Okay. Come on. Cash flow. Is cash flow guaranteed? So what are you doing with cash flow? You're speculating, right? We don't know what rents are going to be in the future. They could be lower, they could be higher, they could be the same. Okay? So cash flow is speculative. It is harder to get better than 0% in northern Colorado with 20% down. If you're running numbers on deals, unless it's probably like a C-class type property, it is really hard to get positive cash flow when you run your numbers correctly. Vacancy, property management, maintenance, well, CapEx, maintenance, yeah. All the different expenses on a property. It is really hard to get positive cash flow in our marketplace when you run your numbers correctly. If you're just running rent minus mortgage payment, sure, it's positive. That's not how we do that calculation though, okay? So it's hard to get better than 0 in our marketplace with 20% down or less. We can improve this by putting more down. Someone says to me, hey, I want to buy a positive cash flow property. I could show you any property in the MLS and make it cash flow. Do you know how? 100%. You pay cash. It'll have positive cash flow. Okay? But if you're financing it, it's really hard to do this. So the more you put down, the better your cash flow is going to be. It also improves the interest rate and lowers the loan balance. So if you put more than 20% down, you put 25% down, you tend to get an interest rate benefit from that too. It's not just that you're borrowing less money, it's also that you're getting an improvement to your interest rate. So the interest rate at 20% down versus the interest rate at 25% down tends to be better at 25% down. And it's more significant than you'd think. I remember Brian was teaching a class once, he called me up on the phone. He's like, so what's the difference in interest rate when you put 20 to 25% down and make it a slide for a class? I said, it's probably about half a point. He's like, no, it can't be that hard. It can't be that high. I said, yep, that's what I think it is. Go call a lender. Okay, next day at the presentation, he comes up, he says, yep, you call up a lender, it's 0.5. A full half percentage point difference in rate between putting 20% down and putting 25% down. Okay? All cash flow explosion strategies still apply. Is there anyone who's seen the cash flow explosion class? Only 2 people in the room saw 3, 4? Okay, so this is an amazing class. It goes over how to improve your cash flow. So this is all the strategies you can do in order to improve this, okay? So cash flow, we just went over that. Debt pay down. Debt pay down is the return you get from paying down your loan. Is it guaranteed or is it speculative? It is as close to guaranteed as you can get. If you make that mortgage payment, part of that mortgage payment goes to pay down the loan, and guess what happens? Something magical happens after 30 years of making a mortgage payment every single month. What happens? The loan is paid off. Okay? So if you actually make your monthly payment, you get this return from debt pay down. It is close to as guaranteed as possible. Doesn't matter if rents go up, doesn't matter if rents go down, doesn't matter if property values go up, doesn't matter if property values go down. Doesn't matter if who's president, who's vice president, who's in charge of the Fed, who's the lender is, it doesn't matter. This loan being paid off is a guaranteed or as close to guaranteed return as you can get, as long as you make that payment. Okay? Now, if rents go down, your cash flow will go negative, but this return stays the same. Okay? So you make your monthly payments, you get this return. It varies on the length of the loan. If you do a 30-year loan, it's different than if you do a 15-year loan. In shorter term, it varies by interest rate. So if you decide you're going to sell the property after 7 years, the interest rate matters as to what return you got, But if you're going to the end of the loan period, if you're going for the full 30 years, it doesn't matter what your interest rate is. Because you always go from whatever balance you were at the start to 0 at the end. Just the curve of it changes, so depending on where you paid off, that could have an impact. But if you go to the very end, it's the same. Any questions? I just did it again. I asked questions and just turned away. All right, I gotta slow down. It goes away after the loan is paid off. So once the loan is paid off, this goes to 0. You no longer get a return in this area. Okay. Tax benefits, it's based on tax law. Right now it's fixed and certain, but tax law can change. How many people were around in like 1986, 88, whenever they kind of changed all those depreciation laws? No one? Really? Oh, you were? You remember those, right? Yeah. I don't remember what year it was. I just remember them changing. All right, so tax benefits. Right now it's fixed and certain. I tend to present it in a raw dollar benefit. There's a whole bunch of stuff. It goes away, though, for residential properties after 27.5 years, because that is the period of time you can actually depreciate the property, the building itself, not the land. Any questions on that? Okay, now I'm going to group them together. Oh, they're both blue. So these on top are speculative, and uncertain. We don't know what's going to happen with them. Depends on the market. They're volatile. They're harder to predict. And it tends to improve over time. It tends to compound. The ones on top. Okay? The ones on bottom, they're more fixed and more certain. They are more likely to have there. They do not rely on market conditions. The ones on the right are cash now. You get the cash benefit of these today in your marketplace, cash flow and your depreciation benefit. It tends to produce spendable monthly cash flow. And they're money you can spend now. The ones over here, those are your cash later. The property value goes up over time, the loan balance pays off, the amount of equity you have increases, but it's not money you can spend immediately unless you do a cash out refinance. So that's what we call cash later. Okay. The sum of all 4 of these makes your ROI. You add them all up together and you get a return. Now, back to our regularly scheduled presentation. Now that you've seen all the different 4 areas of return, let's take a look at what the returns were for those 2 scenarios. The 5% down owner-occupant one and the 20% down non-owner-occupant one, and let's see how they look. What do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? ROI is going to be better on the 5% down. That's blasphemy. That's crazy talk, right? Let's take a look. Here we go. Year 1, return on investment returns. So the property went up, we assume 3% in value, ended up being a 36.3% return on the amount of money you invested, the 5% down and all the closing costs. That's crazy. How much money do you typically get in the stock market? 8, 9 maybe, 10 if you're really, really amazing, right? So you're getting 36.3% return just from appreciation. If appreciation happens, who knows, right? It's speculative. Okay, 36.3. Cash flow. We've got negative cash flow. You put 5% down in the property, and even though we have this amazing interest rate, you still have negative 6.8% return on your cash flow money. But what's depreciation? This is cash flow from depreciation. So you get tax benefits that actually more than offset your negative cash flow. This number, the depreciation number, 7.5, is greater than negative 6.8. So when you add these two together, your overall cash now number is positive. So what's crazy about this market? Where are my nomads that just moved in recently? When you ran your numbers, did you have positive cash flow in year 1? No. And most of the time you will not. It just so happens that our interest rates right now are like amazeballs. And you can actually have, when you calculate in with depreciation, cash flow from depreciation, and your cash flow, you add those two together, you have positive cash flow with 5% down in year 1 if you were going to rent it, which we're not, right? Why aren't we going to rent it in year 1? Owner occupy. Okay? But if you were, it would be positive. That's crazy talk.
You could house hack and make that.
Yeah, I mean, you can get roommates and it looks really, really amazing, but like it looks amazing just doing it regular. It's crazy. Okay, so now you have this, and then your debt paydown return. What's interesting about debt paydown? What's interesting about it?
Somebody else pays it.
Yeah, someone else pays it if you're not paying your own mortgage, right? If you're getting rent on property. But in this case, we're paying it ourselves. But what's amazing about this? Is this speculative? No, it's like your guaranteed return this year. You're getting 22.1% no matter what the market does. 'Cause that's all top. So that's pretty crazy. You add all these up together, you now have a 59% return on your money doing Nomad. Right? Oh, Royce is just checking some math. If it's wrong, it's Brian's fault. You have it on record, because this is Brian's spreadsheet. Okay. He's not here to defend himself. So, all right, so here's the 20% down, though. 20% down, you have same appreciation rate, same 3%, same property, 13.7% return on investment from putting 20% down. And if you think about it, if you didn't have all the extra costs in there, a 3% appreciation with 20% down payments, what should it be if it was pure? If it was pure, what do you think it would be? You're leveraged 5 times, 5x. So if it was pure, it would be 5 times whatever the appreciation rate is. It would be 15%. 3% times 5. Okay? So another way to think about it is, let's say it's a $100,000 property. You put $20,000 down. You made $3,000 from appreciation, 3%. 3%, $3,000 divided by $20,000 in gives you what percentage? 15%, correct, guys. So that's what we mean when it is pure, okay? So because we had these extra closing costs, that's why it's a little less than 15, 13.7. Cash flow, wait, what happened here? We put 20% down. We bought down the rate. It's still negative. You have negative remember what I told you before? It's hard to find properties that can have positive cash flow with 0% down, with 20% down rather, in our marketplace. 20% down, this cash flow on this property is negative 2.4. But when you take into account the tax benefits, it's positive 0.4% return on your initial down payment. Do you like getting a 0.4% return, cash on cash return on your money? Nope. That kind of sucks, especially when you put 20% down. Right? Same property. What about debt pay down? It's guaranteed, 5.51. What's interesting about debt pay down when you have a larger down payment is you're paying off a smaller amount of loan. So the return you're getting is also diminished.
So James, this
Yes.
debt pay down, this is an ROI that you have here?
That's ROI.
Yeah, so it's like, it should be 10.5%.
No, it's not. That's over the life of the loan. This is actually
just
the
year
year one dollar amount over the initial amount you invested. You're right. On a 5% down property, it's 10.51 for the life of the loan, but it actually goes down over time. I can show you a curve.
If you're living in it and you're paying it, it's 0.
That is true. This is if you were renting it, because actually the cash flow number is also 0.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So this is assuming you were. This is as if you were renting it out in year one, which you're not.
Yeah, but if you zero both of those, you're still 43 points.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing stuff. Yep, I totally agree. Okay, so difference between the two: 3 times better to Nomad. Yeah, you have a question? Microphone.
Do you remember what you assumed the rent was in this case on this model?
Yes. No, I don't remember, but yes. I don't remember. It's 22, 22.5. I don't know. I use whatever the property manager told me.
4 bedrooms?
It is a 4-bedroom, 2 living room, 3 full bathrooms, 2-car garage. Delia is what we decided to use. Full 1% of the property value in taxes. I have an increasing, although it doesn't matter, it's an increasing maintenance number because it's brand new construction, some stuff like that. Okay, any other questions about this? And property management. This includes PM.
Are you going to show one that's not just year one?
Nope, not tonight. That's not this class.
That's too many slides.
Too many slides, right? Because everybody wants to see something different. Okay, everyone with me? I'm really never getting through this whole thing tonight. Any questions about this? Cool. All right, so let's talk about story. Let's talk about Royce, or like young professional nomad. Someone like this, someone who recently graduated from college. They have a great job and a little bit of money saved up for their first home. Maybe they got a little signing bonus. Maybe they got a little stock. Maybe they had been saving while they're in college. Maybe they had a summer thing. Maybe they got scholarships and they had some money saved up for college that they didn't have to spend. Maybe mom and dad give them a graduation gift. Input whatever you believe is true here, but they have some money saved up for their first home. If they needed just the 5% down payment, they need about 15 to 20K in our current market, plus closing costs. Yes, you could go and find a cheaper property and do this with. They would need less. I just kind of use the new construction stuff we've been talking about so that you understand the math. We could spend more money to make it better. As we've talked about tonight, we could prepay PMI. Remember I did that? $4,400 in order to prepay PMI. Did you get quoted the same thing or is yours different? Okay, so Royce got screwed. Buying down interest rate, you could pay a little bit of money and buy down your interest rate, or you can do some other things to kind of improve, make this thing a little bit better. In this case, we didn't do that. Okay? Any questions? Okay, cool. They've been moving each year in college, maybe even a year or two after college, kind of going apartment to apartment, trying to find like where they fit in. They don't mind moving if there's a good enough reason to do it. It doesn't scare them like it does us 40-year-olds. Who have been in the same house for 16 years and are like, moving, what is that all about, right? They're like used to it. They don't have any furniture anyway, right? They've got the 3 t-shirts they've been wearing. One of the t-shirts is the one you got from applying from your credit card on the campus. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So I've been moving if there's good enough reason to do it. Is Nomad a good enough reason? We shall see. They are committed to financial independence and saving 20% of their income. They were living on zero, ramen noodles and rice and beans and basically nothing. Now they've got a real salary. They can afford to save 20% of their income. Make sense? Okay. They want to be able to retire early and support themselves in a long retirement. You can't just peak to retirement and then not have enough money to sustain yourself, so you need to actually be committed to doing this long term. All right. So what are their alternatives? They could invest in the stock market. They could decide to rent and invest in the stock market. If they took the same amount of money and invested in the stock market at 10%, and I want to talk to you about this 10% number, because I know you guys are thinking, James, that's really high, right? How many people think that this is high? Raise your hand. Raise your hand. No one else thinks that's high? Who thinks it's low? Who thinks that it's actually like right on? Where is everyone else like hand? You like all like your hands down. All right, so I'm trying to use what I consider to be a high stock market rate of return because I want to try to give the advantage to the stock market so that this one does a little bit better. So when I compare it to Nomad, you didn't say, well, you handicap the stock market. I could get 9% or 10% in the stock market instead of me using 8, right? So if I use 10 here, which I think is I think it's like optimistically high, I'm trying to give stocks the advantage. And that's why I'm using it. I really do not believe you can get 10% over the long haul in the stock market. You're not Warren Buffett. Okay? He is like, what do they call it, the 3 Sigma event? Like there's hardly anyone like him. Right? Everyone else is doing I just read this really interesting book by John Bogle. Bogle? He just died like last year. Jack Bogle? John Bogle. Like common stocks for mutual funds or something like that. Common sense for mutual funds. Really fascinating book if you're into crazy numbers. But he basically says it's really hard to beat the market. And the market's doing 8 to 9% or something like that, depending on what you're doing. All right, so anyway, I use this 10%. You can go look at some of the stats here. I didn't just make the number up, but I tried to use the high end of it. So if they did this, if they took all the same money, and I think I did 20% savings, and they started with a little bit of money up front, they would have approximately $9.2 million 40 years in the future. If they basically did save 20% of their income, and that is $2.8 million if you adjust back to today in inflation, for inflation. Okay? So if they just did that, it's about a $2.8 million nest egg in today's dollars that they had. It's really 9.2, but 9.2 is not what it was. Can't get ice cream cones for like less than 30 bucks. Okay, so let me show you how it was invested and how, if they did Nomad, it was instead. Let's take a look. So this is basically the amount of money they invested in rental properties, and it's staggered a little bit. It's a little bit confusing, but the idea is you could see there's some negative cash flow down here if they did Nomad, which we showed you there's some negative cash flow. And then this is the down payments that they had to put in order to get it. We don't count the one that they're living in until they convert it to a rental, because this is the amount of money they invested in their rentals, okay? So they were living in the property, then they actually converted to a rental, then we'd move this over and we count it as a down payment. With each one that they buy, we did this until they get to the point where they've invested this amount of money. This is assuming they've saved up over time to do it, okay? Let's break it out a little bit. So this is just the down payments. You can see the amount. This is just the negative cash flow. So the negative cash flow over a, I don't know, almost 20-year period, whatever month 200 is, was about $13,000 total. Okay? So they had $13,000 in negative cash flow. Now, was this really negative cash flow? Because I'm not taking into account depreciation. And I showed you on the chart before that that depreciation really offset this negative cash flow even from the very beginning. So really, this wasn't even real negative cash flow. It didn't really exist. I'm just trying to handicap Nomad and show you, yeah, it's negative cash flow if you don't take into account depreciation. Okay? Microphone?
I might be wrong here, but I think another thing that you've never really added into these slides is closing costs are a tax break, right? So every year you're closing on a new property, that's another tax break you get.
Sure.
It's small, but it's, I mean, you try to be accurate with these as much as you can be. So.
Yeah, that's probably true. Okay, so I kind of made this point already. Break-even cash flow is really positive cash flow when you take into account depreciation. So if you do your cash flow calculation and it comes out to be 0, if you actually add in the tax benefits of cash flow from depreciation, you actually have slight positive cash flow, okay? So there's also an interest deduction, which I'm ignoring, because you have an interest deduction on the expense of the interest on your rental properties. I'm ignoring those. I'm just assuming they offset a lot of the income you have, so you have lower taxes. But then I am trying to calculate a little bit of depreciation, and I'm showing that separately. I'm not adding them in to begin with. Talk to your tax advisor, because once you get above a certain income level, this gets deferred. You cannot take it in that year. Okay? So once you get to a high enough income level, this becomes problematic anyway. Any other questions? It's like how I just kind of threw that out there. Okay. So let me show you how we calculate depreciation. I think that's this slide, yeah. All right, so let's say you have a $380,000 property, which we do. You can depreciate the value of the building, not the value of the land. This is a federal depreciation calculation, and I'll show you how to do this. So we're going to take the value of the building, the property, not including the land, and we're going to divide it by 27.5 years. That is from the tax code. That's where I got that number from. So you take $380,000 property in Windsor. The land value I've just arbitrarily said is about $60,000. Ask your CPA what you should use. They may tell you higher, they may tell you lower. I think that's in the ballpark. $60,000 for the value of the land. So the value of the building itself is $320,000. You divide that by 27.5 years, and you get $11,636 in depreciation benefit. This is not cash flow from depreciation. This is gross depreciation. And how that works is you can subtract this dollar amount from your income so that you don't have to pay taxes on that amount. Okay? So to oversimplify, you get to deduct $11,636 from the income you earned. So if you made $100,000, now instead of paying taxes on $100,000, you get to pay taxes on $88,300. Okay? So if you think about this, it's this amount, $11,636 times whatever your highest tax rate is the amount of extra cash you get back on your taxes, or that you didn't have to pay in on your taxes throughout the year. Does that make sense? That's the slowest I've ever presented that information. Okay? So if you're in the 22% federal tax bracket, I think that's what it is for $60,000 a year. That would give you $2,560 back in cash on your taxes. Negative cash flow was negative $48.61 per month on this particular property when you converted it to a rental. So in this case, it's negative $583.32 cash flow for the year, not counting cash flow from depreciation. That means with approximately break-even cash flow, which I consider this to be really, really close, you actually are earning $1977 per year, or about $165 per month in cash flow when you take into account the depreciation benefit. Pause for dramatic effect. Okay? Everyone follow what I just did? I wore short sleeves tonight. There's nothing up my sleeves. That's it. No magic here. That's the numbers. Any questions on that before I move on? Condos do not have land value, is my understanding. Okay. Amount you invested each year. Who knows what I was talking about here? Oh. So we could do less expensive properties, just 5% down, and minimize the money needed. You don't have to prepay the PMI, the private mortgage insurance. You don't have to buy down the interest rate. you can buy properties where you can get seller concessions to help offset how much money you need to bring to closing. For example, if you went out to a certain builder on a certain weekend, they may offer you $2,000 in concessions that the seller is crediting to you to help you pay your closing costs. That means you need to bring $2,000 less to the table. So that could help you, or $5,000, or whatever the number is. Or you can voluntarily take a slightly higher interest rate to have the lender credit you money back toward closing costs, so that you voluntarily take a higher interest rate to bring less to the table for closing. Think of it as the reverse of buying down your interest rate. You can pay the lender money to get a lower interest rate, or the lender can say, I'll give you money if I can screw you with a higher interest rate. Does that make sense? Okay. It's not really screwing you. You're choosing which one you want, right? So with a $300,000 property, your down payment would be about $15,000, which is, lower than what we've been talking about. You may also have, higher negative cash flow to start because you're not prepaying PMI, you're not buying down the interest rate, you're not doing all this stuff. So you're choosing whether or not you want to finance some of this money monthly in the form of negative cash flow, or if you want to take some of the cash you have in your pocket now and prepay it up front. Does that make sense? You're either financing it or you're paying it up front. Your choice. So we used a $380,000 property, prepaid PMI, and bought down the interest rate with no seller concessions in this example. So here's the net worth difference. So this is if Royce decided to invest in the stock market and he was a magical stock picker and was able to get 10% return on his money. He ended up with just under $9 million, or just over $9 million. Or if he did Nomad, bought 10 properties, lived in one forever, converted the previous 9 to rentals, he ends up with just over $30 million. Which would you prefer? 30. Okay, but it's more work. You got to move 9 times. Okay, I'll move 9 times for $20 million, right? Yeah. Okay, so here's the difference in actual numbers. It's 31,334,000 versus 9.1 million. The conversion at year 40 with 3% inflation rate is about a third. So this is about 3 million versus about 10 million. Just really rough math. The difference in today's dollars. So if he does Nomad, it's like having about $10 million in today's dollars when he's ready to retire, plus cash flow from the properties. The cash flow is included in net worth, but I'm saying cash flow because he doesn't need to withdraw that money in order to live on. He can live on the cash flow. See the difference? Okay. All right, return on investment equity. So for stocks, it's really simple, right? You have a certain amount of money in the stock market. Each year that you have that money in there, it grows by 10%. It compounds on itself. So you had $100,000 in one year. It goes up 10%. It's now 110,000. Is that right? 110,000. And then the next year, you're trying to earn 10% on 110,000. So you earn another $121,000 in year 2. It compounds on itself. So it's always 10% of whatever the then amount you have in the stock market is. Does that make sense? Okay? Real estate's not like that though, right? Because it's not like we can easily see what the balance is in our real estate account. Okay? So you have to think of it as a return on equity calculation, not a return on investment calculation. The alternative is this. So let's say you bought a property, $300,000 property or so. You paid down the loan a certain amount. The property went up in value. So now you have about $100,000 in equity in the property. What you have to do is say, if I sold that property and I took that $100,000 in equity that I have and I invested in something else, what return could I get on that money? And how does that compare to if I have this $100,000 locked up in the property? And the way we do that is we look at the overall dollar amount of return that we're getting and we divide through by the equity we then have in the property in that year. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay. So return in dollars, the dollar amount of appreciation, the dollar amount in cash flow, the dollar amount in debt pay down, the dollar amount you get in tax benefits, although that one stays the same, those tend to increase over time. The percentage return you get on equity tends to go down because your equity is increasing, property value goes up, mortgage gets paid off, the amount you're getting is increasing, but it is on a larger denominator. The denominator in this case wins. So the return on equity goes down. I'll show you that in a chart. So this chart shows you the amount of return you're getting in dollars. The blue field is appreciation, and they're all stacked on top of each other. So appreciation is continuing to go up each year. By the way, this is all 10 properties. So it shows you your overall appreciation going up. The red one is your debt pay down. That's how much debt you're paying down on the property. Your green one is your cash flow. So cash flow started, it was a little bit negative at the beginning. Then it continues to increase over time. And then your yellow one is your cash flow from depreciation. That eventually goes to zero because we end up losing our depreciation benefit, and it eventually goes away. Okay? So will debt pay down after a while. But overall, the trend is the amount of return in sheer dollars is going up on all of your investments. You're making more and more money each year on these properties. But if we look at this as a return over that amount of equity we have, oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a step. This shows you if you adjust for inflation. So this shows you that if you adjust back and you divide through by that 3% a year that you're getting for inflation, you end up peaking out at about $20,000 per month return in dollars on all your rentals is what you end up getting in today's dollars if you adjust for inflation on the properties. This is the one I thought I was coming to. So this is return on equity. So at the very beginning, you're getting this appreciation, you're getting a little bit of negative cash flow, you're getting a little bit of positive cash flow from depreciation, you're getting debt pay down, all those returns over a very small amount of equity. Why is your equity so small?
You only have 5%.
You put 5% down, you haven't bought many properties. So you have very small amount of equity in your property, but you're getting this big return. So the return he's getting on his money here is like pushing 30%. Then it keeps going down as he buys more and more properties, his equity keeps increasing, till eventually his debt pay down is going to go away and his depreciation is going to go away. He's only then left with two returns: appreciation and cash flow. Okay? So eventually it's going to go down where he's only going to have these two returns. So the longer he holds the properties, the lower his return on equity tends to be. Does that make sense? Okay. Any questions on that? Okay. All right, so that's the end of Royce's story. Let's do story number 2. Someone who is 40 years old, they wake up one morning, maybe they came to NCRAG, and they're like, oh my gosh, I am not where I need to be for retirement. I need to get my butt in gear and do something about it. So what is the fastest way to catch up? We will use similar assumptions that we did to the young professional nomad, but you want or need to stop working in 25 years. The young professional could work for more than 25 years if they wanted to, right? A lot of them want to do FIRE. They want to do financial independence, retire early. But, there you go. But, once you get to be 40, you don't really want to be working past 65. You don't have to. So you could stop working earlier and coast in, which I'll talk about later. But the idea is that you may not need to work to be 65. You may acquire your 10 properties, especially if you have a little nest egg starting with. Then you could say, all right, I'm done at 60 or I'm done at 55. I'm going to actually spend down the extra cash reserves I've accumulated, knowing that my rental properties are going to be paid off and they're going to take over from there. So you could coast in with this model. A couple changes to the assumptions. Your job income stops after 25 years. Okay? For this assumption, I assumed you are no longer working at this point after 25 years. So it's up to but not including month 300. And then I'm assuming too, because you're actually catch-up nomad, that you're able to get a $2,000 a month and adjust for inflation Social Security benefit at age 65. Okay? So if you're getting more than that, then go ahead. By the way, I think I used $60,000 income for both of these. So in case you're wondering, for young nomad, young professional, and also for this one. So it basically starts at 25 and it continues on forever. Then a reduced savings rate from 20% for young professional to a 10% savings rate for the catch-up nomad. Now you can make an argument, if you wake up and you're 40, you really should put it in gear and actually bump up your savings rate from 10% to something higher. I'm just assuming it's going to be hard for you to get to 10% because you're used to a certain standard of living, and if you're behind, you're probably not a saver or you had some type of life event. But in this case, I'm saying you have to get to 10% in order to do that. Okay? The more you save, the better it's going to be for you. So I reduced it, though, from the young professional, so it's a lower savings rate. Everyone follow? Understand my logic? Okay. Here's the net worth difference. So this is month 300. So this is 25 years from now. 25 years from now. 4.6 million in inflated dollars compared to 1.164 if you did stocks. So if you basically took the same money and you invested in stocks over the next 25 years, you'd have 1.164 million versus 4.62 million if you did Nomad. Okay? Just for inflation, it's 2.2 versus 557. So having 1.2 million 25 years from now is like having 557 in the bank today. Or doing Nomad, it's like having 2.2 million in the bank today. Any questions? Here's the net worth spanning 6 years, I think, prior to 25-year retirement. So month 240, 60 months, it's 5 years. Sorry. So 5 years early. So this is for you age 60. This is age 70. This is age 65. And this shows you if you did stocks, what your net worth would be compared to Nomad. So if you did age 60, you'd have just over 2 million versus just over, I don't know, whatever that is, 7 million if you got to age 70 with this plan. If you just did stocks, I can't even tell what that number is, nor can I tell with this one, but they're probably in the whatever range that is. Okay?
Probably are.
That's awesome. I should do a whole presentation like that. And you can see on this chart, there are numbers. Some of them are bigger than others. Let's go. Any questions on net worth? You guys understand what I'm saying though, right? This is basically age 60 to 70, and it shows you your net worth with the two different plans. Is there anyone who's confused? Okay. There you go. That's good enough, right? All right, so positive cash flow. So unlike the stock market, one of the things that occurs to me is like when you're saving in the stock market is you have to start pulling money out of the stock market in order to live. So you have this kind of like this reduction in what your investment is as you spend it. And so the more you spend, the lower your balance is, the harder it is to make more money in the future because that's your principal that you're touching. With rental properties, that's not the case because you could actually have your properties going up in value from appreciation, the debt being paid off, but then you're throwing off cash flow. If you're only spending the cash flow portion, it's not dipping into your kind of like your balance, your kind of asset base because your asset is still throwing off that cash flow. So it's one of the big differences there. So you could borrow against the equity in your house. So let's say you're like, look at these numbers and you're like, you know, there's not enough cash flow being generated for me to completely live off the cash flow on the properties. What can I do? Well, you can tap into equity or sell the houses, kind of like the creating wealth model. You buy more than you need, you sell off some and you pay off the other ones. That's another model. And so there are strategies to do that. I think it's part of the cash flow explosion class. Go listen to that one. Or there's other ways to do it by paying off properties or doing cash out refinance and stuff like that. So I think I'm going to show you a chart of something here. I'm not sure what. Oh, here it is. Total true cash flow. So this includes the depreciation, the cash flow from depreciation benefit as well in your thing. So this, and this is also inflation adjusted. So this is in today's dollars to make it easier for you to understand. This again is age 60. This is age 70. Here is age 65. And it shows you the cash flow. Now something really interesting I want to point out about this. By the way, this is like $2,000 at like whatever year that is, 61 or so. So it's $2,000. What's interesting about this? Well, we're saying you're making $60,000 a year, but you're living on 90% of your income. So you're really living on $54,000 a year because you have a 10% savings rate, right? So your standard of living is really a $54,000 income. Does that make sense to everybody so far? Okay, so really we're only trying to replace $54,000 in retirement. The other interesting thing is $2,000 a month of that is replaced from Social Security once you get to 65. You could take it earlier and take a little bit less. So now really what's our target? It was $5,000 a month. Now it's really only $4,500 a month, which is really now only $2,500 a month because Social Security makes up $2,000 of that $4,500. Did everyone just follow what I said? So really, what do we need this number to be in order for you to maintain your current standard of living, assuming you make $60,000 a year on this plan? $2,500. So how far off are we? Well, we're pretty freaking close, right? It's probably right around here somewhere. So really, when you combine in Social Security, which you may need to coast in and fund your difference, it's not that big of a difference, so you need to fund your difference for this next 2 years or so until you get to 65, and then that picks up. And by the way, cash flow just continues to improve. So your lifestyle may be better in retirement than it's ever been for you. If you do the Nomad plan, you acquire 10 properties, and you just let these 10 properties pay off over time. Because once they start paying off, it really improves cash flow. Every one that you own is like having $1,200 in today's dollars in monthly cash flow. So if you only needed to replace $2,500, once you get to the point where 2 of them are paid off, you are met what your other income was for the rest of your career, the $60,000 you were earning. Once you get the third one, you just gave yourself a $1,200 a month raise. How many do you have? 9. That's 9 times 1,200 is what? What's 9 times 12? 108? $10,800 a month plus the $2,000 for Social Security is $12,000 a month when you are used to living on $4,500. So 3 times the income you're used to living on by doing the Nomad model as a catch-up plan.
5 years into retirement.
20.
Oh.
Well, this is basically 25 years to get to this point from where you are now. Catch up 40 years to 65. And then it's whenever your properties get paid off is really when those things increase, which may take a while unless you're starting to reinvest some back into it and buy it earlier, right? Because you're waiting for like the 9th property to pay off. That's when you get to the point where you get that full cash flow benefit. But it's increasing every time you pay off another one and as rents go up. That makes sense? Everyone with me? Anyone confused? Okay. So properties paying off. As properties get paid off, cash flow improves significantly. I talked about that. Better to buy properties earlier. So the strategy we've been doing, especially when you're only saving 10%, anyone come to the class where I did how to acquire a multi-million-dollar portfolio starting with $5,000? And I showed you basically how to save to basically buy another Nomad property. It took longer for the first couple, then it kind of sped up. You guys remember this? If you're doing catch-up Nomad and you've got a little bit of money saved away, maybe you have a house that you can sell, it's got $50,000 or $100,000 in equity, and you're able to use that money to make sure that every year on the year you acquire your property instead of having to wait to save up for the down payment and taking a year and a half or 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is. If you can stack them earlier, that means that your properties pay off earlier, which means your cash flow improves earlier. So if you have 50, 100, 150, whatever it is that you have from the proceeds of a sale or money that's saved up, you can take and just kind of pull off 5% for that next property. You should do it as soon as possible. 12 months in a day. Because that means that your properties are going to get paid off earlier and you're going to stack it way ahead. Does everyone follow what I mean by that? Okay. So properties to pay off, you have to, if you have additional cash once you've acquired your properties, hoard that because you may need that to say, I want to stop working. I can pull some of my cash from that to bridge the gap until Social Security kicks in or first property pays off or rents go up enough where I can actually meet my minimum income requirement with. Does that make sense to everybody? Anyone confused? Okay. Then you can also sell off properties and use the equity to pay off other properties earlier. So this shows you just the account balance, how much you had in your bank account. This is the same age 65. This is age 60. This is age 70. The yellow, the orange line is the one if you were just investing in stocks, which that's all your investment. It's up here. So you have whatever this is, $550,000 adjusted for inflation in today's dollars at age 65. With your Nomad one, this is you buying your last property. Then this is how much you've saved up until you're at age 65 that you can start tapping into if you needed to bridge that gap until right here your Social Security kicks in and the rental properties are starting to pay off down the road. Make sense? Does everyone see what I'm showing here? Anyone confused? Sweet. All right, little down payment. This is short. The more down payment you have, the more likely you are to have positive cash flow. We talked about the idea of you put 100% down, you're going to have positive cash flow. The less you put down, the more likely you are to have negative cash flow. Lower down payments usually mean deferring down payments into usually short-term negative cash flow situations. We talked about the different loan types. I'm not going to cover that again. Or you could use down payment assistance for those nothing down loans, which I don't think I talked about earlier, but there's programs where you can do a FHA loan and get some type of down payment assistance to help you with part of the 3.5% down, like a CHAFA loan or something like that. It's not my area of expertise, but they are out there. There's some programs like that. All right, fix and flip. Where are my fix and flip people who told me fix and flip is the best investing strategy? Raise your hands. All right, good. I waited to the end to embarrass you. All right, so fix and flips are work. Nomad is work, but it's different work, right? You have to buy a new property, move in there, live there for a year, and then convert it to a rental. And these numbers, by the way, were with property manager. We had a property manager hired for these. But fix and flips, they're a job. You got to go find the fix and flip. You got to go hire the contractors, oversee the contractors, do it, sell the property, cash the check. Did I mention cashing the check? You got to cash the check. That's a lot of work. So fix and flips are work. They're a job. You got to get up and do them. Okay? Buying one rental property, like the sort of one we're modeling, it's not exactly, because I saved this slide from a previous presentation, but it's very similar. It's a Nomad type model. One rental property is like the one we're modeling, and holding it for 30 years is like doing 37 fix and flips at $30,000 net profit each. So doing one Nomad property and then converting that to a rental and holding it for 30 years is like doing 37 fix and flips, mathematically, from a dollar amount wise. So you can do fix and flips if you want, or you can buy one rental, and it's almost like doing a fix and flip a year. If you're doing 10 properties over 40 years, it's the equivalent of doing 400 plus fix and flips with $30,000 profit over the next 40 years with a fraction of the work. So if you go acquire 10 rental properties doing the Nomad model over the next decade, and all you do is hold them as rental properties, it's like you just did 400 fix and flips. Okay, so I'll show you the chart. That's the number of fix and flips per year that the property generates at $30,000 profit. So in the beginning, it's smaller, but over time, it passes to the point where it's one a year, and then it becomes more than one a year later on. So it just shows you the number of fix and flips per year that having a single rental property is like. So how many people want to do fix and flips?
How about fix and hold?
I don't think fix and hold makes a lot of sense. Think about this. So you go there and you capture an extra $20,000 in equity by buying a fixer-upper, doing all that work to do it. You probably have a little bit of your own money in there unless you're going to do a cash-out refinance or a rate-and-term refinance. But you're probably going to have a little bit of effort to do that in order to have a property that you bought at a $20,000 discount, essentially, is what it comes down to, right? What does $20,000 discount get you? Gets you about $100 a month. So if you want $100 a month, you could do all that work and do that. Or, and the challenge with fix and flips too, is you don't get to choose your property. It's like whatever comes up in whatever neighborhood you want is what it is. It's not like you get to say, I want to buy back into a park in this really amazing brand new subdivision with this great house that's a perfect floor plan for me and a perfect floor plan for a rental. You tend to get funky stuff. That's what you tend to get. I mean, that's why they're fix and flips, right? So with the Nomad model, instead of having to go and do all this work to get maybe an extra $100 a month, you can go pick a better property, probably get the $100 a month premium by picking a better property to begin with, and a property you can live in, and you get to choose it and be very selective about what you pick. Better rental property, better location, better condition, and you do it that way. You're welcome to do buy, fix up, and hold. I just don't think it's worth it. If you're doing it, if you're going to sell it and you get the 20K out, sure, that's income, right? That's job now, you get money from it. But if you're doing it, you're buying hold forever, I don't see it. I don't get it. Like, I'd much rather have the opportunity to select prime location, prime property, my timing, my layout, all that other stuff. I think that's worth more, in my opinion. So it's a good thing I waited close to the end. So if you're going to leave, you're not going to leave that early. So thank you for doing that. All right, I do want to talk about, this is basically the end of the presentation. So I've got about 6 minutes, but I want to talk to you, if you want to hear it. By the way, I'll take any questions you have. The presentation is essentially over. If you don't have questions, though, I will talk to you a little bit about my personal situation and how I look at return on investment quadrant, return on equity quadrants, and why I'm trying to convince Tammy to Nomad 20 times in the next 20 years, even though we can do lean fire right now. Okay? So I'll explain to you why it is that we are doing what we're doing, if you'd like to hear it, and how I think about this stuff in reality. So do you have questions, or would you like me to kind of go on my own tangent? My own tangent. Okay. All right, so I got about 5 minutes left, and if it goes over, it goes over. So you guys remember we talked about this return on investment quadrant earlier in the night, correct? And I told you the two things on top are largely speculative, right? The appreciation rate, it's really whether or not the market goes up. I have zero control over whether or not a market goes up. I think I'm investing in a strong market over a very long period of time that's going to at least keep pace with inflation, but I have no idea. I don't know. So when I tend to think about my own personal investments, I ignore appreciation. I assume appreciation is going to be zero. Okay? So do I expect to get some? Sure. Am I counting on it? Am I going and investing based on appreciation? Absolutely not. Okay? So I basically assume appreciation is essentially zero. Cash flow. Cash flow is also speculative. Sure, you could buy a property where the cash flow looks good on day one. Sure, you could think that rents are going to go up. Basically, you could think that you're going to get good cash flow on a property. But I think over a very long period of time, in order to be ultra conservative, that cash flow is also going to be zero. Okay, so let me explain to you what I mean by that, because I want to be very, very clear. When I buy a property as a nomad, I expect cash flow to be negative for the first few years that I bought that, right? This is an exceptional situation with really, really low interest rates. But in most cases, nomads in the room, when you're buying 5% down properties, do you or do you not have negative cash flow up front? You have negative cash flow. So I plan on there being negative cash flow with a new nomad property. However, over time, I think that rents tend to increase with inflation, and your mortgage payment, the principal and interest part of your payment, is fixed. Your taxes and insurance will go up if your property value is going up, which if inflation is happening, they probably will. Even though I'm ignoring appreciation as far as my return, I'm not naive enough to think that it's not going to be there when I'm calculating my expenses. But over time, cash flow should typically improve on a rental property, such that over a long enough period of time, the cash flow is going to make up for the negative cash flow I had early on. The longer I own a property, the larger the CapEx are going to be, the capital expenses on the property, the more maintenance I'm going to do on the property. And so over a very long period of time, I'm just assuming that any positive cash flow I happen to get is going to just cover any negative cash flow or repairs or maintenance on the property. And to make it even more conservative, I'm also going to include cash flow from depreciation in that calculation. So all the tax benefits I get from owning the rental property, all that cash flow, I'm also assuming that that is just offsetting any negative cash flow I have. So when I look at this, what did I just tell you? I just told you I'm assuming there's no appreciation. I'm assuming there's no cash flow. I'm assuming there's no tax benefits. What's left? Is debt pay down speculative? It's essentially guaranteed, right? If I go and I put 5% down on a rental property, what is the return on investment I get over the life of a 30-year loan for having 5% down on a rental property and just paying it off? 10.5% return. What can I expect to get in the stock market? Maybe if I'm lucky, right? And it's risky because I don't know if it's going to go down 30% that year. I don't know if it's going to go up 20% that year. I have no way of knowing. What's so interesting about debt paydown? It's fixed. I mean, I'm getting 10.51% or 5%, whatever it is, over the course of a 30-year loan. So as much money as I possibly can put into a fixed 10.5% return on my money for a 30-year. Don't quote me someone else and say it's a CD, but it's sort of like a CD. I stick money in, 30 years later, I get this big chunk of a paid off house out. And then at the end, when the house is paid off, I don't have any debt on it and it becomes additional cash flow. Or I can sell it and make that money back. So let's say it's a $400,000 property today. I've ignored appreciation. I've ignored cash flow. I've ignored cash flow from depreciation. At the end of a 30-year period, I own a free and clear $400,000 house that I had to put $20,000 in to get. $20,000 in, black box, call it a CD, call it whatever you want. At the end of it, I'm getting $400,000 out in today's dollars. Okay? So, how many nomads can I do? One a year. So I'm trying to get Tammy to do 20. Okay, we're going lean. We sold all of our furniture. We're like going super minimalist trying to do Nomad because 10 nomads is about $4 million, ignoring the other things, just basically paying off the loans over time. 20 of them is about $8 million more. And by the time you get to the point where they're paid off, It's about $1,200 a month, probably a little bit more than this actually, but $1,200 a month is a conservative number for what your cash flow is on a free and clear property after all expenses, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, everything. So 1,200 times 20 is about $24,000 a year in today's dollars. Per month, I'm sorry. Okay? So that's sort of how I look at it, super oversimplified math. Okay? Now, I will add one more thing to this to help you understand something else. So we are living in a property. We own the property free and clear. We've raised our kids there. We've owned it 16 years. Basically bought it in 2003. So I'll walk away with, I don't know, $500,000 or so from that property. If I just take that $500,000, stick it in a whatever, CD, bonds, whatever account, and I get 4%-ish per year on that money, that pops off about what I need, even without touching principal for the first couple, for the down payments on doing Nomad. And then you have a $500,000 cash buffer to handle whatever may come along for anything that's going to happen with any of these properties. Okay? And if I have to go into the $500,000 base of stuff from that one home sale, I can use that in order to pay for the down payments for the properties moving forward. Okay? If you think about it that way, now there's other stuff, I mean, I have other investments, but just overly simplified for you guys' benefit, right? For someone who has a house that they have $100,000 in equity or 150 or 200 or whatever it is, that's the way I think about it. Now, the numbers get crazy when you really apply it and you do 20 Nomads, but that's what I think about. Are there any questions on that? Microphone.
Why did you decide to sell the house that you currently own instead of converting that to a rental and just taking paid off cash flow?
Great question. So the reason why we do that is because I would not have bought this property as a rental. Okay, it's a property, it's a $500 and whatever thousand property in a nice neighborhood where the numbers on it would not make a good rental. And so why keep a property that would not be a good rental? Sure. Yep. So if your property you are living in now is a good rental, you need to adjust whether or not you're willing to take the money out and use it to buy other investments, because you may have a bunch of equity built up, or you could take free and clear cash flow. But you know, I've been very conservative, free and clear cash flow type of investor for a while, and that's been my philosophy, is unleveraged. I mean, Brian and I have this discussion all the time. His math is 100% correct. It is better to be leveraged than it is to be unleveraged, but there's a like sleep at night component for me that I like. And so one of the solutions to that is $500,000 in cash and start doing Nomad where you're highly leveraged. And you can handle anything, any type of market correction you have if you're buying like one a year and you're doing that. And there's other reserves and stuff, but I'm not going to go into those. But that
is literally the debate between my wife and I.
Yep.
She is you in this situation.
Yep.
Ultra conservative.
Yep.
Buy it, pay for it, live off the cash.
Yep. Brian's right, but I sleep really, really well at night.
What's the point of it if you don't sleep at night?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's true. Yeah. What question, Dan?
So it sounds like you're willing to pay capital gains on your current residence?
No, I live in it. So it's an owner-occupant residence. I lived in there 2 out of the last 5 years. I lived there 16 out of the last 16 years. And so you have an exemption for your sale of your primary residence.
Oh, right.
You have no capital gains on it. So I will walk away with every dollar.
I have a question. If you and Tammy were willing to live apart for 6 months, could you do this plan in 10 years? Because she could owner occ one for a year and you could owner occ one for a year.
Yes, you could, but we're totally not willing to do that. We've been married 24 years and we want to see 25. So so that's probably one of the reasons why we're not doing it. But the other thing is, I mean, the alternative is this, right? And I showed you what 20% down looks like on here. We could take $500K just from this sale and probably buy 7 rentals that you could do with 20% down, and then you get most of the way there anyway. So you could do that, but I mean, no. And by the way, this could all change tomorrow, right? Tomorrow I could find an amazing deal, place all my cash from the sale of the house, and everything's off. But I'm just telling you my thought process so that you understand how I think about this stuff, okay? So I hope that helps you. Any other questions? Oh.
So I'm not able to do Nomad, and I've kind of got a little depression going on.
Yeah?
At the two differences
We're going to start a support group.
But it's, I mean, you're not talking down about putting 20% down as an option. You're just talking about the difference.
The numbers are better if you do 5% down. And that's what's hard about it, right? Because I'm looking at it, I could say, hey, I could be really, really flush and do this 5% down thing, and it's better.
But you're still, I'm trying to talk myself up here on doing the 20% down, because I can't do Nomad. There's no way. It's still a 19% return on investment with 20%.
Oh,
down.
yeah, it's probably pushing 30% overall. So when you really look at it, it's probably overall about 30%.
Okay.
Yeah, when you have a sale and stuff like that. Per year. Yeah. When you do 20% down, the number we like to do, if we're doing like a lease option deal, we try to aim for about 30%. Yeah. Okay. So it's not bad. Yeah. But you know, when you're talking about Nomad, it's probably 4 times that.
Right.
Well, it's a trade-off.
It is trade-offs.
I'm in that 20%, right? I'm trying to do that.
Yeah.
And the biggest bummer is nomading, coming up with that.
Microphone.
Like, you know, we're not flush with cash by any means, but nomading you can do by saving up 15 to 20 in a year. You could scrimp and save and do that. Doing 20% down, trying to save $100K a year, it's so much harder to
depends on your
just
income
do
level.
it that way. Yeah.
It depends on your income level. And
but
so,
both things being equal, on that $60,000 a year income, it's a lot easier to nomad every year than it is to buy a 20% down rental every year.
100% agree. It is definitely easier than that. There's a microphone back there for Austin. There's something else I was going to say. I was going to say, so I was you, right? I mean, I lived in the same house for 16 years. We weren't moving anywhere. I had kids in high school, you know, kids in college. We weren't nomading. There's no way. But now the kids are gone. We are in this 3,500 square foot house that me, Tammy, a dog, and a cat. I mean, there are rooms I don't go in. Like, it's too much house. There's no need to do that. So yeah, I mean, we're just optimizing now. And the other thing that happened too, and I don't know how personal I want to get, but we lost some family members recently, and we had to clear out their house. And they lived in a house for 40 years. They weren't hoarders, but they had lived in the same house for 40 plus years. And it was like, we're never letting our kids do this. You know, we're never having our kids have to clean out our house like this. So one of the things we did is, I mean, you all received the crop of my harvest, you know, the going through the library and pruning down stuff. You guys got a lot of my books, not anywhere near all of them, by the way. I picked like, yeah, like I had a library in my house, like no joke, like room of a library. So, you know, this is like, we're going minimalist. I sold furniture, like all my bedroom furniture is gone. I only have a bed. I'm literally going to use a moving box for my nightstand is my plan. Because I want to optimize for doing Nomad. We really want to live, you know, super frugally, super minimalistically. And when I say frugally, people look at me, they're like, James, you do not live frugal. And you're probably right, but I mean, it's frugal for me. So that's where I was. I was not willing to do it. I mean, I was able, I just was not willing to make that sacrifice. And we could have bought 20% down properties, and we did buy 20% down properties into partnerships and things of that nature. But now it's like, I'm in a different mindset. I'm like going from what I consider to be lean-ish fire to full-on fat fire. I mean, just 8 million, like no appreciation, no cash flow numbers. It's just a pure $8 million pay off the property play, starting with big cash reserves. That's sort of the way I think about it at night. I like to say I feel really, really comfortable with that plan.
Why wouldn't you go to a 15-year plan?
Where's the microphone? Sorry. The question was, why wouldn't you go to a 15-year plan? Because I don't want to put the risk of that additional cash flow. And if I want to, I could take money and pay off those houses if I wanted to. Or things got really crazy and my money in stocks and the other real estate I have, if they all went to zero, I could take that $500K and pay off the house I'm living in and be free and clear again. I mean, that's it's like a defensive position. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I mean, like I said, tomorrow I could go and just reinvest that whole amount and just be done, right? Or invest other money I have and be done. I mean, it's just, this is where I am today. This is how I think about it. And I wanted to share so that might help you guys. Austin, do you have a question?
Yeah, so kind of along the lines of the 15-year. So then why are you, even with having the cash reserves, when you're talking about ROI, ROE, are you wanting to pay it MI up front?
Because I'm going to hold those properties till the end. And I want to make sure that I have I maximize cash flow from the very beginning on those properties. I have this huge war chest of cash. me spending an extra $4,400 to prepay PMI and then not have the risk of a market going down and have to figure out if I'm going to pay an appraisal and miss it by a percentage point or something like that, it's easy for me to write the $4,400 check, like super easy. And that's how I think about it. And I can look at the return I'm getting and I can see the return I'm getting on that is probably more than a 10% too. So, yeah, 10% is just this weird threshold, right? If you could beat the stock market, maybe I should invest there instead of the stocks. And I'm thinking about it not like my wishful pie in the sky, appreciation, cash flow from depreciation, all those numbers combined in there, because I have no control over those. But I like fixed numbers. I like numbers knowing that I'm getting this. And over a long period of time, I think that the properties are going to appreciate like crazy. I think cash flow is going to be amazing, but who knows what happens next year, right? And if you're doing Nomad, you're buying every year, you're dollar cost averaging or dollar value averaging, depending on how you're looking at it. And it's just amazing. I mean, when you do the numbers, it's super conservative position. So for those of you that are considering Nomad, come Nomad with me. We're going to go new construction neighborhoods probably. Neighborhood to neighborhood. Buy brand new houses. Any other questions? Yeah. The question was, is there any drawback to doing it with condos? Probably not. So the HOA question comes up all the time when we talk about condos. And part of that HOA fee needs to be set into maintenance. Plus, part of the HOA fee can be used to lower your insurance costs. So the HOA is not as bad as you think it is at first glance because you can offset some of those. However, I don't know if I'm a condo guy.
It's also, the HOA, all of that, yeah, it's out of your control. Whereas if you look at the way James is looking at this, he wants everything in his control. That's fine.
I'm a control. Yeah, I'm a control freak.
Yeah. So if you're not into worrying about the control, condos can work out. In fact, the appreciation rates,
they're about the same.
They're about the same.
The appreciation in condos and single family homes, they can have up years and down years independently, but they tend to track together.
And being on some HOA boards, you can help get the control back, but I don't think you can be on 20 HOA boards and stay sane.
Yeah, I mean, there's HOAs with single family homes and metro districts, so I mean, I don't think it's an HOA issue, but yeah. There's no like specific reason I'm not doing that. And I apologize, I've kept you guys 10 minutes after. You are welcome to leave if you need to. You will not offend me in any way, but I will continue to answer questions, so please keep the noise down.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.